The mirror tense of the traveling fair. Bell's theorem and quantum entanglement. The twins arrived at every fair a week ahead of the show and asked for the same thing every time. Two tents pitched as far apart as the fairground allowed, with no line of sight and no way to shout between them. Their act was called the mirror game, and it looked, on the surface, like the kind of trick every fairground has a version of. A visitor would step into the first tent where Adaiza sat and pick one of three colored flags, red, green, or blue, from a box she hadn't touched. Adaiza would give back a ball, black or white. At the same moment, in the far tent, a second visitor would show Kwame a flag of their own choosing, and Kwame would give back a ball too. Neither twin could see the other's tent, hear the other's answer, or know in advance which flag either visitor would choose. The flags were drawn by the visitors themselves at the very last second, from boxes shuffled fresh each show. When both visitors happened to show the same color flag, the twins' balls always matched, always black, black or white, white. Without fail, show after show, town after town, audiences found this satisfying but not especially mysterious. Twins raised together, people said. A code worked out backstage years ago. Nothing stranger than a magician's trick. It was a traveling mathematician named Keita who first found it stranger than that. Keita had watched the act 3 times before writing anything down, and what caught her attention wasn't the matching flags, it was the mismatched ones. When the two visitors happened to show different colored flags, the twins' balls still agreed far more often than seemed possible, and disagreed in a very particular lopsided pattern, depending on which two colors had come up. Keita worked out on the back of a fair program what any ordinary explanation would require. If Adeza and Kwame had simply memorized, backstage, a fixed answer for every one of the 9 possible flag combinations, an instruction card, agreed once, and carried separately into each tent, then no matter what the card said, the rate of agreement across mismatched flags could never climb above a certain fixed ceiling. She could prove the ceiling mathematically without knowing a single thing about what was actually on the twins' cards. Any pre-agreed strategy, however clever, was bound by it. The twins broke the ceiling, not by a little. Keita tallied thousands of trials across a dozen fairs, moved the tents farther apart each season, first paces, then furlongs, then, one memorable autumn, two opposite ends of a valley, with the flags drawn from dice thrown at the very instant the show began, too fast for any signal to cross the distance between the tents at the speed of a shout, a drum, or even, Kita began to suspect at any speed nature was known to allow. Every time, across every distance, the twins' agreement on mismatched flags sailed past the ceiling her mathematics said no prearranged card could ever reach. She interrogated them separately in different towns, years apart. Neither could describe a code. Adaze insisted and seemed to believe it, that she simply didn't know what her ball would be until the flag was already in front of her. That there was no answer sitting ready in her mind beforehand, waiting to be read out. Kwame said the same independently in a different town, with no way to have compared notes. Kita spent the better part of her career on the puzzle and never fully closed it. What she could rule out with total mathematical certainty was that the twins were carrying any fixed, pre-decided answer into their separate tents. The ceiling forbade it, and they were sailing over the ceiling every single night. What she couldn't explain was how two people, sealed apart with no possible channel between them, managed to behave when the numbers were tallied less like two separate performers, each making up their own mind, and more like a single act that simply happened to be standing in two tents at once. Their mirror game isn't a card trick, it's a narrative staging of one of the deepest results in 20th century physics, Bell's theorem, and the phenomenon of quantum entanglement it was designed to test. The story starts earlier in 1935 with a paper by Albert Einstein, Boris Podolsky, and Nathan Rosen, the EPR paper, arguing that quantum mechanics as it stood must be an incomplete description of reality. Quantum theory predicts that two particles can be prepared in an entangled state, in which measuring a property of one particle instantly correlates with the outcome of measuring the same property on the other, however far apart they are, and however the measurement choice is made. Einstein found this suspicious. He suspected the particles must be carrying some fixed pre-agreed set of instructions from the moment they were created, a local hidden variable, the physical equivalent of a Daisy and Kwame's instruction card, and that quantum mechanics simply hadn't identified what it was yet. In 1964, the physicist John Stuart Bell found a way to actually test this. He derived a mathematical inequality now called Bell inequality, describing the maximum correlation any local hidden variable theory could ever produce between measurements made on two separate particles across different possible measurement choices, exactly as Kita's ceiling describes the maximum agreement any fixed instruction card could produce across mismatched flags. Quantum mechanics, Bell showed, predicts correlations that exceed this ceiling. It was no longer a matter of philosophical taste between Einstein's view and the standard quantum picture. It was an experimentally decidable question. The experiments were eventually done, most famously by John Clauser in the 1970s, Alain Aspect in the 1980s, and Anton Zellinger's group in the following decades, with steadily closing loopholes. Work that earned three of them the 2022 Nobel Prize in Physics. The result, replicated exhaustively, nature violates Bell's inequality. Entangled particles really do correlate more strongly than any pre-agreed local hidden variable could account for, exactly as the twins' results kept sailing past Keita's ceiling. The crucial subtlety, and the reason this doesn't let you send messages faster than light, is what physicists call the no signaling theorem. Although the correlation between the two distant measurements is stronger than classical physics allows, neither side's individual results on their own show any pattern at all. Adai's balls, watched alone, look like a perfect coin flip, and so do Kwame's. The strange correlation only shows up when you compare the two records afterward, which requires the same slower than light channel any other information does. Entanglement produces a correlation deeper than classical physics permits, without ever permitting a signal, which is precisely why the twins could never be caught passing a message, only caught behaving in the tallied statistics like a single system that had never really been two separate performers to begin with. Thanks for tuning in. That's another episode. See you on the next one.